y'all, did y'all expect a lot of the homework? Did you expect a lot of the things that you saw in the homework? Or was there some that kind of like, or, I mean, obviously didn't surprise
actually,
you?
there were a couple of cases where I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't expect anyone to go and try to implement classes to solve some of their homework problems, and I saw a couple of cases where some people tried to, and I thought that was pretty awesome. I like seeing people reach like that, you know, with concepts they're not always comfortable with, you know. That's cool. On the whole, I was glad everybody did as well as they did on the homework. Shows that we can move a lot faster. We're gonna, I think, keep speeding up until the pain starts, and then we'll know when we've hit the right pace. So.
All right, so we're going to write a little program that takes some user input, compares it to a random number that we generate, and tells the user if the number they entered is higher or lower than the random generated number. So one thing that's really helpful, I was going to say as a beginning programmer, really just at any time, is pair programming. So you sit down with another person, they're looking over your shoulder, one person's typing, but you both end up writing the program. And that way, you know, you've got some help, maybe some new ideas come about that you wouldn't have thought of. So what I'm going to try is to pair program with the classroom. So first things first, like I said, we want to take in some user input. So y'all tell me what to type. Puts. What are we putting out? We're going to prompt the user.
Type in a number.
Please enter a number. Okay. What do I do now? Input.
Equals.
I forgot what we were trying to do. What we were trying to
The high-low application.
High-low. So we're going to take some user input. We're going to compare the number entered to a randomly generated number, and we're going to tell the user which one was higher, their number or the random number.
Now we dealing with decimal precision here?
Yeah, we can just stick to decimal precision.
Okay. Gets dot chomp
Gets dot chomp
dot to underscore F.
If we did 2F, we would have floating point number,
Okay.
which we could use. You think I should?
That would be the decimal precision. I think what John meant to say is we'll probably stick to integer precision.
Oh, did I say?
You said we were going to stick to decimal precision.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant integer. Okay. So we've got our input stored in a variable there called input. Now we're going to do something that.
Quick question. Can everybody see that okay, or do we need to kill the lights for this?
I can see it fine.
Can y'all back there see it okay?
You want me to shut it and see?
Or not? It gets a lot better.
Very good.
Is that easier for everybody?
Yeah.
All right. So our random number. What do we want to call that?
Is there a random method?
Yeah, but the variable that we're going to store it in, y'all don't care. We'll just call it random. The method is actually rand, and it's going to take a range, and we're going to give it a range from 0 to 100. So that's going to, what that's going to do is give us a random integer within that range. So
is that an array? Or I'm sorry, I don't want to go.
no.
Okay. Thanks.
No, this is a function we're calling that takes 2 parameters. Is that right, or is it like this? I think it's like that. Okay, so it takes a range, which we will go over later. But basically, like I said, that's going to give us a random integer from 0 to 100. Okay, so we've got our user input. We've got our random number. what are we going to do next? What's that? If.
Greater than.
If what? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
If input is greater than random.
Puts.
Number is high. The number is lower than
Is higher than the random number. So what if we wanted to actually put the numbers into our string here? How would we do that?
Oh yeah, curly bracket.
Hashtag curly bracket?
And then you can put random. I mean input.
Okay.
Hashtags only make me think about social networks now.
I call them pound signs, man.
That's better. I'm gonna use that now.
New millennium, man. Hey, the times.
All right, are we done?
No,
What do we do now?
we gotta do it slow.
So
If
if
else.
else,
Else,
else if. All right, and so what's my condition here?
Input
Input
is less than
and
random.
If I can type.
That's your number. Or just copy that.
Yeah, I'm gonna copy. So
Lower.
our number is lower. All right, now we're done, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
Feel like the answer's no.
What if it's equal?
Oh, else.
Else.
Oh, else if again.
Input equals random. Oh.
Input
Equal-
equals
equals
random.
random. Puts.
you guess the right
Copy. Paste.
Yes, the random number.
You're done.
You didn't put it's supposed to be two equal signs.
There we go.
All right, y'all are paying
Oh, you
attention.
didn't hear me say that?
I didn't hear you say that. I'm sorry.
Oh.
All right, so we've covered all the cases, right? We've got greater than, less than, and equal to. So if we run this, we should expect it to work.
Why'd you do else if and not else at the last?
This will work. It's probably not the best. I did it because that's
Oh,
what y'all
yeah.
told me to do.
Equal than a random number.
When I wrote this, what I did this condition first, then I did an else if this condition, and then since there's only one other possibility, exactly, you could just put else. That's the only other possibility here.
You take away the condition.
Mm-hmm.
Take away the condition. It's just else.
Oh.
That's how I think.
All right, so let's run this guy.
Do you have to have the not the brackets, what's the name I'm trying to say? Parentheses. Right after the else?
No.
Or after the if? I mean, you could space it, I mean, just for.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
space it. Yeah, they're not even required.
Oh. That's just our way of.
All right, so I entered a number 56. Press enter. There's no way I guessed that right. Let's run that again. Okay. I did guess it right. What are the odds?
Wow.
Like 1 in 100 or something.
Exactly 1 in 100.
So you would have thought that was a bug.
I did think it was a bug. All right, so now we've hit two of our cases, right? We hit the equals case, we hit the lower case. Are we done testing this?
We haven't tried.
No.
No, we are not, because we have not hit all of our cases. So let's just real quick take a look at this. So the first time we executed this, I somehow happened to guess the right number, and this condition wasn't met, so it skipped this. This condition wasn't met, and so it ran the else here, right? So this code was executed. The second time I ran it, my number was lower, so this evaluated to false. So then it tried this, and this evaluated to true, printed this out, and then we were done. So far, this line of code has run, and this line of code has run. This line of code has not run, and so, like I said, we have not tested it fully.
Would you? Never mind.
Go ahead.
I just put. You copied and pasted so many times. You have is equal then the random number. I mean, I'm just saying, being specific. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. We got a Brandon over there. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, really.
Is equal
Sorry,
to
sorry.
the random number. Now we got to retest all this. All right, I'll run it again and see if I can guess a higher number here. And I barely did.
You're close.
All right, so all right, so that seems to work pretty well. Now, what we wrote here, and good job, class. Y'all wrote this. Y'all did excellent. We wrote this procedurally, right? We didn't use classes. We didn't use objects. So what I want to do now is go back and rewrite this using a more object-oriented approach. So I'm just going to start coding this down here. So does anybody want to tell me how I can start my class here? How I can write a class that might
Class numeric. Class number.
class
Okay,
number.
all these are taken.
So one thing that
Class.
no one stepped on this, or no one really came across this in their homework, but there are reserved words, and there are reserved classes that are already taken. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. So a good quick example, looking up here, if anyone ever tries to assign a string to a variable called puts, it is not going to work. You're just going to print equals whatever to the console. Puts is a reserved word. It can only ever be used as a function. Okay, so you said numeric. Numeric is a class already. Every number in Ruby inherits somewhere from the numeric class. So it's already taken. You can't use it.
I thought that's what we were looking for. I'm sorry. I
No,
thought
no,
we
no,
were
no, no.
looking
He was looking for a new class to define.
for Just any word other than
Yeah.
something. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Words like if, end. You can't use those as variable names. They're taken by the system. They mean something.
All right, so we'll just consider this we're going to consider this a game, and the game is called high-low. Actually, I'm going to start over with a new
That was
file.
imaginative.
Thanks. So we're going to name our class high-low. Now, let me start over. We're going to name it high-low. Did I follow convention
No.
with my class name?
No.
No, I did not.
Yeah.
It should be start with a capital and be camel case, correct? All right. So what's the thing I mentioned earlier that every class has, either implicitly or explicitly? Do you remember the thing that?
I remember.
Yeah, I know you do. It starts with an I.
Initialize.
Initialize, which is a
Definition.
constructor.
Constructor.
All right. What variables do we have up there? We had input and random. So let's go ahead and find those as well. What is it? Accessor.
So could y'all explain what the assessor is again then?
So we're defining up here, these are properties.
That'll always stay with our high-low class, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
those
these
are
are being-
scoped. Those are scoped to instances of the high-low class. So high-low objects, we will create high-low objects from these.
Okay.
Each of them will have their own input and their own random.
All right, so who can tell me, looking at this code up here, just someone tell me the steps that our program goes through. What's the first thing we do? Go ahead, Ben.
The first thing the program does is please enter a number, and then the user will then input a number, and then it randomly generates a number between 1 and 100, and then it goes through the if statement to figure out if the number the user inputted is greater than, lesser than, or equal to the number the user inputted,
Okay, so
and then prints accordingly.
the first thing, that's correct. If we wanted to break this up into methods, we could probably group these two things together, right? This is asking, or pretty much just asking the user for input. So let's create a method that does just that. And we will call it get user input. So we'll just kind of copy this over here. Now, does anybody see an issue with that code? Anybody remember? Yeah, this is a violation of a scoping rule. But does anybody remember why? Has to do with me or something kind of like me? Self, yeah. All right, so input here is not referring to this input. So we need to say self.input, right? Okay, so if we run this right now, assuming this wasn't here, what would happen?
Doesn't have anything for random.
Would it do anything? Would it?
It would
Just-
run and
You would ask them for a number, and then you put in a number, and that'd be it.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it would not ask for a number. We are not calling get user input anywhere. In fact, we haven't even instantiated a class of high-low yet, right? All we've done is define a class. So if we want this get user input to be called, we're going to have to create an instance of our high-low class. So we'll call that game equals high-low dot new. So now we have a variable called game whose value is an instance of this class. But again, this get user input is not called in our initialize method here, so we're going to have to call it explicitly. So we call game get user input. Now when we run this, it's actually going to prompt us for input. So we'll go ahead and do that. Make sure it works. And it just stops. That's what we expected, so that's good. Okay, what's the next thing we need to do here?
So, random.
What's that? We need to set our random variable, right? Okay. So we'll call this get. I'll call it, yeah, that's fine. Get random value. And we'll say random equals rand 0 to 100. That good?
Self.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
See, that's where pair programming is so powerful. One person screws up and everyone else can correct them and laugh at them.
Came out, he's all laughing.
Okay, so
Should we define like where to please enter a number? Should we say between 0 and 100?
yeah, we can do that. We could actually create a variable. Let's do this. Let's say, let's create some constants. And this is a new, it's just all caps, right? The constants. Okay, so we'll create a constant for our range of random numbers here. So random floor and random ceiling. Is this is that the right syntax, Jeremiah?
Equals.
Equals. Okay, so we just defined two constants, our random floor and random ceiling. So now instead of 0 to 100 here, we can actually say random ceiling, random floor. And then in our string up here, we can do string interpolation and so now instead of changing those values in several places, we can just change them in one place. Does everybody see what I did? Okay. Let's make sure that runs. Okay, that ran. All right, now, so I guess since we're expecting a number between 0 and 100 here, we could probably check our input, right? So we could say, well, yeah, we'll just put it here. If self.input is greater than 100, then we have a problem there, right? Your number was too big. Did I type that? I typed that. And if it's smaller than 0,
Extra E in there.
I'm used to normal languages.
Yeah, I know.
Your number was too small. Okay. So now we're doing some validation on our input there. All right. Okay, so far we're just getting user input. We've defined our get random value, but we haven't called it yet. So we will call game get random value. Okay, so at this point, if we were to run it, our user would be prompted. They would enter their input. That input would be validated.
Why did you put the self.input is greater than 100?
Well, we're asking the user to enter a number between 0 and 100. So if that number is greater than 100, then it's outside of that range.
Oh, that's all you're, okay.
Do you have to have an else?
Yeah, if we didn't have this else if here, well, we could have two if statements.
Right there, right?
We could do this. Is that what you're asking?
Like, what if you said in your if state, yeah, pick a number between 0 and 100?
Do you mean Could we put those
in
both?
that string right there that says your number was too big, could you just say, just pick a number between 0 and 100, like as instruction?
Sure, yeah.
And not have an else after it?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is could we do this? And we haven't covered this, but I'll go ahead and do it.
I don't think that's what he was asking. to do.
No? Okay. You're just
I'm
saying.
kind of confused about what you're asking too. What was
Okay,
it?
so you just have an if, and where it says puts, you say, instead of your number was too big, just say, pick a number between 0 and 100.
Well, because you're, I get what you're, okay, I get what you're saying now. Why would you be so explicit in saying your number was too big?
Yeah, why have two, like,
Why have two different messages for two
Yeah.
different cases? He's just being explicit right now. Generally speaking, the more specific you can be with your error messages, the friendlier it is to the user. It's not a requirement or anything, but this is very rudimentary error handling anyway. So
Yeah.
you can do it without.
Yeah, you can put anything you want here.
I mean, you can do it without the else, the if works by itself.
yes, you don't have to have an else if. You don't have to have an else. You can just have an if. It
Okay.
just so happens we have two different cases we're checking.
Well, I guess I'm still lost on why you have the initialize and nothing behind it.
Initialize is your constructor. Whether you define it there or not,
Okay.
every class has a constructor.
Okay.
He just put it there because he used it as part of the exercise. Does everybody remember what this is? You know, he could put something there. If he doesn't put anything there, then it'll just execute normally.
Okay. But that's you have to have that before you created the.
No, this doesn't have to be here at all. We can completely leave that out.
It
So-
has no bearing on the application's efficiency.
It's just
Okay.
if you want something to run when you execute this line,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to have your own constructor.
We'll show you a little bit later. The example that I'm going to do is going to talk more about constructors. So
Okay. All right. So we got our user input. We've got our random value. So now we need to check and see if our number is higher than the random number. So let's create another method that does that. Check high, low. And I wish I didn't delete all that other logic. It's here somewhere. There it is. Boom.
and we start over. It's always much faster the second time.
All right.
Times that really fast. Your fingers were moving so fast.
Right. Comes with years of
Copy pasting experience.
All right. So yeah, I just copied the logic with it. We already wrote earlier. We need to do some cleanup on it though. So we'll say self.input. You don't have to put the self here, right? But I'll do it anyway. I like to be as explicit as possible because,
Confusion is the devil.
yeah. All right, so we should have everything here that we need for a functional program that is equivalent to the first one that we wrote. The only thing we're not doing is calling our check high-low. So we'll go ahead and call that real quick. Check high-low. So now when we run this guy, yeah, it should work just like before. Eight is lower than 61. Cool. 99 is higher than 24. I'm probably not going to hit the equals case, and that's all right.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't handle in my program was what's going to happen if I enter a number. What happens if I enter 105?
You gonna get that your number is too big?
it's going to tell me that my number was too big, but my code is still going to execute, right?
So basically, it gave you a warning that something went wrong and didn't try to fix it.
So I'm not going to go into, what time is it? 7:11. Yeah, I'll skip going into actually fixing that. But one thing we could do is if either of these conditions were met, we could prompt the user for another input. We could just exit the application. Several things we could do there. But again, right now we're just continuing execution and spitting out a warning. So, are there any questions on what we did here? Is anybody confused by anything?
Kind of see now how it's like a blueprint for something, because then this allows you to put apps, like mini apps, into like one big app. So it's like an app.
That's exactly how code works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we had another program that wanted to use this class, we could just import the class and use it.
In fact, this doesn't just work this way on small scale applications or even large scale applications. It's this way at the operating system level. So like, how many of you have ever had DLL problems with Windows?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. DLLs are packages of objects in a library. And so code that's running on your computer is looking for these objects in this library it says is supposed to be in your system. Can't find it, and so it's crashing out. But the point is that they structured the operating system that way. That way when you get updates, you don't have to copy a whole new version of the system. You can just copy and update a couple of libraries that have classes in them, and the classes code changes, and it changes some kind of encapsulated logic that makes everything work better.
How do you know about your ends without actually looking through? And I mean, I kind of see your lines, and it's barely shown on mine. But is that where the ends are supposed to be? You know what I'm saying? How many?
You're talking about. I'm guessing you're talking about like these.
Right. Yes. So normally, how would y'all check it? I mean, obviously, if you run the code and it's not working, then you know, will it?
I try to write my code. This is pretty clean code that he's written. It's pretty easy to tell by looking at this. A lot of times editors will put the end there for you, so I rarely have to type end myself.
Okay.
But it's just something you get used to watching for that, especially in Ruby, because end is probably one of the nicer ones. It's when you get into like braces and parentheses. And
Yeah.
has anyone ever used Lisp? Scala? Racket? Okay.
Lisp looks like this.
Lisp looks like that. He's not joking.
I've seen code like that. And
That's not sarcasm. Your code looks that way.
It's terrible.
It's bad.
I've seen that. I thought that was like some sort of like joke.
It's not a joke. It's a pain, is what it is.
So, and sometimes like my define or check high low didn't start off. It started off on the left hand side of the screen. It didn't indent by itself or tab by itself. So I tabbed it to keep it.
That could be because you didn't give your file a .rb extension.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't saved it to a .rb file, it's going to treat it like a plain text file, and it won't know how to highlight properly and how to indent properly and that kind of stuff.
Well, I have it as RB, but I mean I just tabbed it over, but and that's why I was asking about my ends because I got a little lost on it.
Let's see, if I come down here and I do, you see it automatically indented on the next one? And
Oh,
here's your end.
okay.
So, yeah.
The define itself doesn't have to be indented. That's what I was
Question?
No.
Yeah.
asking. Yeah.
So when I run the program, I mean, it asks for the number, but then it just kind of ends there. Not sure
Did
why.
you call these methods on your game object?
I think about all of them. That's about all of them. I'm not sure.
You want to go look while I start on that stuff? Are you done with
Yeah.
your example? Okay.
Now, these examples gonna be saved.
Yes, they are.
See, that's what I was getting. I got a syntax error, unexpected end of input. That's why.
Yeah, you've got some. You've either got probably one too few. I'm gonna guess one too few ends somewhere.
Okay.
Actually, it could be
You
one
say
too
one
many.
too-
It's one too many, probably, isn't it?
Yeah. So your definition, get user input, has to have its own end,
Yes.
and then the if statement.
Every if statement has to have its own end.
I think I didn't put the end. Okay.
That random floor that has to be all caps.
That has to be all caps. We're going to talk about that
Also, like
in the second example that I
patch
do.
code that John made, where he was like, where you could show the procedural approach. You can keep that in the code that you wrote for this if you like block it out as comments.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it says, like in
Yeah.
comparison. So
Mhm.
that's a useful thing to do.
Yep.
I'm gonna grab some paper real quick.
Okay.
So, what's the benefit to using the system over the system that we've been using? I mean, like, as in the
classes?
Yeah.
Well, one's code, the primary one's code reuse.
Mm-hmm.
You get to reuse the same code many, many times without it being excruciatingly procedural. I realize that these, especially in these small examples, it's hard to see the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal. As the applications scale and get bigger, you're going to be very thankful those objects are there. It's one of the reasons why object-oriented programming was made, to make these algorithms smaller.
So why did you call self input only the first time in the if
In
statement?
check high-low,
Yeah, but not only the first time in the puts section.
we'll talk about that a little bit in the next example too. Does everybody have written as much of this as they want for the moment? We're going to save it, and obviously this is going to be put up later for y'all to review, but everybody got this?
Damn,
you want
makes
to,
a big difference.
You want a break now, or you want?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and take about a 5-10 minute break if y'all want to get up and stretch your legs, because the next part's going to be kind of lengthy.
There's some bagels and
Lots of
stuff
food.
in the kitchen. If anybody's hungry, good stuff in there.
Where do we pause the recording at?
See up in the top bar there, hit that record button.